So pretty much completely burnt out on it. The 3D aspect of it wasn't getting anywhere. I kind of just lost all ability to do it, and then fell off coming up to Christmas, doing my dissertation, and then couldn't get back to it. Pretty much from Christmas on, it was not happening, and I kind of wanted to do something a bit more exciting, a bit more fun. So, pretty much just started brainstorming after Christmas. It was just thinking different ideas, and I had a few different ideas. I wanted to make sure I was still working on Illustrator, so then I started focusing on 2D. It's like, why am I doing 3D if I'm just doing Illustrator, Photoshop, and After Effects for my job anyway? It's like, I don't really need this 3D aspect in it. So that was scrapped. That was the first thing to go, and then I started looking at different ideas as how I could use 2D and After Effects. After a few different sort of iterations of ideas, there was one where I quite liked. I've been doing quite a lot of photography. I've always been doing a lot of photography, but that's come into my job a bit more, so I started to get a bit more practice in, and so I was looking at different ways of using photography and 2D animation together. I knew a guy, Michael Gustafsson, as far as I'm aware his name is. You see some of his work here. It's 3D, it's done in 3D, but it's using like layers of 2D assets to make landscapes and animate them quite nicely that way. I've always liked this stuff, and I was like, oh, that's a sweet way of using photography and animation together. And then I went into Illustrator and started practicing, because I've been learning Illustrator. That was one of my main sort of tasks, and one of my main targets for the year was to learn Illustrator, get better at it, and make my assets in that, and then obviously put them into Photoshop if I need to. But that looked like a great way to practice, and I practiced some landscapes, but none of them really turned out as I would like. So kept brainstorming, kept working away. After Christmas, I started watching a show called Black Sails, just a pirate show based in way back in the day. And I've always liked pirates, funny enough, and I never really knew how much I liked it's a bit more romanticized nowadays, but I always liked the aesthetic and like the stories from, I guess, that era. So, coming to the end of binge watching this series of Black Sails, I was looking through some stock music, and I came across a song called Chained, which you will hear in a second. But as you can see beside me, this was a very quick storyboard that popped into my head, literally just as it were, as I was sitting listening to this song. And I will show you the result of that storyboard now. Okay, so as the story goes, obviously the start of the song is you can hear the chains banging. I was just thinking in my head, pirate shackles walking down deck of a ship, bang, right there. That's sort of the whole idea came from. Now, part of the story in Black Sails and from a game, Black Flag, which is Assassin's Creed game. Quite a lot of the story is romanticizing the whole pirate life and the stories from it. One of the sort of episodes or scenes or whatever from Black Sails is this attack on a English ship by pirates. The pirates were chasing them, and when they got to the ship, they discovered they were that their storage or their cargo was in fact slaves. The story then goes that instead of killing the ship and killing everyone on board, they free the slaves and let them join their crew. They fight for their freedom, and essentially it's this whole idea of freeing the chained and freeing those who are either locked by society's norms or locked physically in chains, that sort of idea. There's a lot obviously romanticised, and if you went back with stories of back then, it might not be as pretty and all that sort of stuff, but this story is, I guess, a nudge or a wink to those sorts of stories, that sort of romanticised idea of it. So, starts off with walking down the deck in chains as the first shot. So the idea is you'll see them walking down the chains, guards on the left hand side and the right hand side, and then goes to the captain of the ship, obviously royal attire, royal hat, royal outfit, looking out over the deck of the ship. Goes to the back of the royal ship to show it's being chased by pirates. So, cut to the pirate captain, lightning flashing on his eyes, sort of zoom in, close-ups, sort of medium shots, go to the people on the deck, zoom out on the cannons, show the cannons being loaded, ready to fire, and you see the two ships come up beside each other. As the sound, the bass drops, cannons fire, that's the other ship. Chaos, people flying through, shrapnel, that sort of idea, just a nice scene, maybe a slow-mo, instead of just people flying through the air with shrapnel, cannonballs, and in the end, you see the chains broken on the deck, or watching the other ship sail off. That was all done just as the song was playing, just let the sort of ideas come out, and I just started to get, quite excited about the whole story, about the idea of it, and I thought, this is perfect. Now, in terms of the styling, this is a short animation that was put out about 10 or so years ago called Blackwater Gospel. This style I first seen actually as an edit, or an edit for a David Guetta song. I seen it about 5 or 6 years ago whenever David Guetta was cool, and I just thought it was class. Always thought it was class. Didn't know what the original video was until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But this style, I went and seen the breakdown of it whenever I found out what it was. It is done in 3D with 2D textures, and you see in the sides and top there, the sort of wooden effects and stuff like that. And I just thought that this style would be perfect for a pirate story. The way everything made of wood, and then this sort of scene in the left, there's basically at the end of Blackwater Gospel, there's a massive fight scene. Everyone gets murdered, and it's really high paced, really action packed, and the way it is done is, you see some more here, but the way it's done is this. So there's always this really anime manga feel rain coming down heavy, just like streaking across the screen, and everything's done in this sort of silhouetted, dark, moody and grungy feel, and I just thought it was class. Imagine a big pirate ship battle with the storm, the clouds, and the lightning striking through the sky and all that sort of stuff. Like, with being done with 2D textures, I thought it'd be an awesome opportunity to do a 2D animation in this sort of style. Obviously not exactly like this. I want to change the colours a little bit, and I guess the characters are going to be a bit more different just because they're done in 3D and I want mine to be 2D. But as well as that, the animation is going to be different. A lot of the animation is quite fluid and quite high movable, but characters aren't really, all this high energy action isn't really what I'm looking to show here. It's not really my forte of anything. I want to show my design abilities and my Illustrator process and Photoshop, and bringing it all between those three things, because that's what my employer is looking for, so I want to be able to show that that is what I can do. So yeah, this sort of style I just think is class, and I'll show you some more shots from this animation. There's a character on the right, he is just cool, and this is another sort of main character of the show, and you see this wood effect and how it's all grainy, and it's got this constant vignette of water grain and like censored dirt and that sort of stuff that sort of aesthetic I just think is perfect and class. Now this is actually from the same animation, but you can see the contrast in the sort of styling here. I will probably be sticking more to this sort of top styling, but this rain effect is something that I would quite like to get in mine. Not necessarily the same, this is obviously very stylized, but that sort of chaotic, make everything fluid and motion, like there's not that much motion planned into my animation at least, but I want to have certain aspects always moving and certain things being very dynamic to make it feel very full of energy. Yeah, just some more shots here, some more characters. I love this sort of cell shaded almost effect on everything. Again, something I would love to achieve through my own project. Okay, so a big thing obviously with a pirate themed animation is the water. Now, 2D water is something that I feel is quite difficult to get right. I've looked for a lot of good examples, but this is the best one I found. Now, this is an old World of Warcraft advertisement. I forget which one it was for, but the way they did the water was you basically have these static images and then add motion to them to give the whole piece motion. So for example, this bottom left, it was almost like a static image, but then the waves have had like almost like a smudge effect added to them, and then some spray, and the hair was constantly waving, and it's almost like this static image has been brought to life, and that's what I want to achieve in a lot of the scenes in my one, because again, minimal character animation, minimal animation in general that way, but I want to add life to all these scenes. Okay, so a lot of my time was spent researching, I guess, the scenes that I want to use, and then the ships that I want to use, and that sort of idea, just to build up what I want each shot to show, I guess. So this ship here, this is the HMS Victory. Now this is like one of the pride and joys of the Royal Navy from back in the day. Big galleon, big like 4 or 5 deck ship. It's what you think of whenever you think of Royal Navy back in the pirate days. So massive big open deck, cannon ships or cannon lines up the side and everything like that. Most of this research was done for the shots and the angles, but a lot of it was also done because I don't really know how much detail and how the perspectives and the what everything looks like if you're standing on top of a ship deck, all the different rigging, all that sort of stuff, because obviously I'm going to have to draw it and all that sort of stuff. So I initially went through and got all these different shots on deck. I actually went into a couple of games and took different shots from movies and combined them just to, again, imagining the captain. I can see at the top here, second enslaver ship, but I'm imagining the captain standing at the wheel here and looking out over the deck, and then you see people down on the deck, that sort of angle. That's then a chase scene, so I wanted this flag to, so again, just putting these, combining different images that I'm finding of different angles of things and combining them into shots that I quite like, and then framing the thing. So I want the flag flying down, but then I might want it slightly higher. I do develop this out, and you'll see later in this vlog that I've developed these and use Illustrator to build them exactly how I want them. But this is how I started off, getting different ideas for the ships and how they're going to look. So this is the HMS Victory. This is actually a art drawing of the HMS Victory, but just to see the detail and the size and the scale and that sort of stuff of them. And then this is the pirate ship. So down the left hand side I've actually got some of the shot ideas. This one's Pirates of the Caribbean. Actually, they're all the ones on the left are Pirates of the Caribbean. Top ones of the pirate captain. So first medium shot, and then as the lightning strikes you zoom in, you see his eyes. And then the bottom one is the one the idea I have for the cannon shot, where you're seeing the pirates loading the cannon or readying the cannon. Basically I want to start possibly closer to the interior of the ship and then zoom out with the music. So I quite like the idea of animating to the music. So yeah, I just quite like to zoom out from the back and then have the highlight of the front of the cannon as they're lowering down the igniter stick onto the cannon. Just because I really think that'd be a class way to move from the inside of the ship to the outside of the ship, readying the cannon, sort of establishing the whole idea that this is going to be a fight. Using the whole silhouetting of the Blackwater Gospel, as I say, character design isn't really what I'm going from here. I'm not really trying to make really dynamic, not necessarily dynamic, but I'm not trying to make super detailed full body characters that I'm rigging and all sort of stuff. I want to make particular scenes with particular detail and then add life to them. So maybe using silhouetting and using all this sort of effect that way. I'd quite like to show this shot with the pirates in the background, you know, readying the cannon, that sort of idea. So yep, as I say, I went through quite a number of just establishing, and then I've used these further on as bases for my assets and bases for my shot illustrations. Let's see, so yeah, more on deck. So yes, that's basically where the whole idea came from. Just got a little bit of inspiration, found a song that really matched the way I was feeling about the story that I wanted to show, and everything sort of came together all at once, and I find a sort of passion in it. So I was quite happy to move away from the past project because it was hitting a dead end that I wasn't getting over. But in the past 2-3 weeks, I've made more progress on this creatively than I had in the past project. So just feeling a lot better about it. Let's see. Okay, so the next step in the process after the first tutorial where I talked about this idea, I wanted to develop the shots a bit more, because I had an idea, obviously from the first storyboard, roughly what they were going to look like in my head, but it's quite hard to get the perspectives and get the shots and get what's going to be on the right hand side, what's going to be, what's going to be in the shot in terms of developing an asset list. So the next step was I was going to jump into Illustrator, as you can see here, and start developing out the storyboard. So first shot, cut people in chains. I've used some of the shots from just seen in Photoshop just to combine them in terms of building up the backgrounds, just to see what would be in there and that sort of perspective if I'm on the ship deck. So you can see down the right hand side, you can see the ropes, and the left hand side is the left of the ship, or the side of the ship. And then I want to have possibly guards standing, but that's the sort of thing I'm going to bring into Photoshop and draw in the background, because they're not going to be necessarily focused assets in the shot itself. So yep, first shot as built up there. I'm not going to go too much detail in these. Again, captain looking out over his deck. You can see people down on the deck moving in the chains, and then you've got the rigging and the masts just to see what's going to be in that shot. This will be the outside shot of the ship sailing away. Obviously not too much detail in the boat yet, but just to get a size of the scale, the angle, perspective, all that sort of stuff. And then you can see that the pirate ship is chasing them. Again, I want the flag to be the focus of this. You might be able to see down onto the deck of the pirate ship in this shot, but I want the flag to be the focus because I've got that sort of a cool effect on it. And then first medium shot of the captain of the pirate ship. I've been doing a little bit of a character development. This one's pretty much based on the main character but the captain in Blackfire in Pirates of the Caribbean. I probably won't go down that route, to be honest with you. I quite like the cliches of a pirate captain with the patched eye and the pirate hat and the big beard, all that sort of stuff. I do want to go down that route, but this is just a basis of perspective, how he's going to be looking, where he's going to be looking, because I want to flesh out that character design a lot more across the period of the next few weeks and months. And then first medium shot, and then into your close-up, just as maybe what I would quite like is like a flash of lightning come down his face, just lighting him up and really contrasting and all that sort of stuff. Obviously with the rain coming down on top of it all, because in the middle of the big storm, should be nice and dramatic. Again, use this shot from Pirates of the Caribbean, but using sort of that depth of field focus, just starting with the end of the cannon and focusing and zooming out with the music with the camera, blurring out the background just in a silhouette as the lighter stick comes down onto the cannon. And then got the two ships coming up side by side. Now, I did flip these because I felt that it tied in a bit better to see the captain pulling up beside the ship, and then you see, oh, they're going to fire on them, and then as the music drops, the cannon fires. And then from there, we've got the sort of destruction scene where the cannonballs are flying through the side of the ship and shrapnel's going everywhere and people are flying and all that sort of stuff. What I'm feeling for this is a main focused character flying through the air with all the shrapnel around them, and then again depth of field blur focus in the background, and you see people cowering or see people trying to fire their guns, but not much is really happening. But then this main character can be flying through the air in this sort of slow motion as all the shrapnel goes around him. Maybe a cannonball, as you can see, maybe a cannonball's flying under him and all that sort of stuff. Just a real like, what the, a climax to the whole idea. And then in the end shot, there is the broken chains symbolizing the whole they being freed, with the pirate ship sailing off into the distance. This end shot is something that I'm working on, and I'm probably working on a bit more just because of the other module for this semester is the end of year show, because I would quite like the broken chains to be basically the poster child of this animation, and I don't know how well, I haven't developed that out yet, pretty much, but I like the idea of being able to see the broken chains with the pirate ship sailing off into the distance. So yeah, this was all very helpful to get all my perspectives and almost build like this canvas to paint on top of. My idea is to build the base assets, especially all the focused, like the characters and the ships, all that sort of stuff, build them in Illustrator first, just so I can separate the assets a lot nicer and make all the shapes a bit cleaner, and then bring them into Photoshop, add all the detail, and paint the backgrounds. So, like for example, using this one, the ship itself, all this flooring, all sort of stuff, it's just a foundation, and then paint the detail on top of it, rather than trying to add all the detail in Illustrator, because that's not what it's for. So that's the basic idea, and then paint the backgrounds. You see all the ropes, and you see the sandbags, and you see that sort of the filler of the background. I want to paint that in Photoshop, paint in these 2D backgrounds, and do it that way. As well as obviously adding detail to the animated aspects, because they're the main focus. So obviously in this shot I've got 2 sets of legs moving, so it's quite simple animation, even in 2D, really just moving the chains probably be the hardest part of that, but you can see where I'm going with it all, just building it up, building my foundations, building my shapes, and then painting on the detail and adding the effects and After Effects. So the waving flags, the waving sails, the waving water, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so I'll show you what the storyboard of this turned out. I won't talk over it because it's the same idea as the first one, but I'll show you what the storyboard for this illustrated version looks like. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a better idea of what sort of scenes I'm going for, what sort of shots I'm going for, and obviously gives me a better idea of what assets I need. Obviously with a lot of that I can build upon what I already have there. So if I took, say, the Victory, the HMS Victory, brought it into Photoshop, painted over the top of it, and built up a few more shapes, I have a foundation because the perspectives are already there and that sort of stuff, which helps me a lot because I'm not working in 3D. 3D just drags me down, essentially, just because I'm not as fluent with the softwares. Photoshop is my bread and butter, and Illustrator is becoming one of my main tools. So those make the creative process a lot easier for me. And that's why the drive never burns out as much if I'm just working in those 2D softwares. And yeah. Okay, so a big part of what I think is going to make this animation feel dynamic and feel alive is the water. Well, probably not the water. The water's not the main focus, but in all the shots there's always going to be sails, there's always going to be flags, that sort of constant motion. Even if the character isn't moving too much, or even if the ship isn't moving too much, you can still see the waving of the sails, and you can still see the water sort of moving and being dynamic and that sort of thing. So I thought a very important technical test to do straight off the bat was all these sort of wave and displacement and turbulent noise effects in After Effects, just so I can customize how my flags and sails all move. So I grabbed this just off the internet, this 2D flag of a pirate, Jolly Roger, and started practicing all these sort of effects. So I'll show you this one. This has got a nice subtle sort of wave effect on it with the slight turbulent noise, all making it highlight and that sort of stuff. So this can be transferred over to the sails, the ship's sails, the obviously the pirate flag, and this sort of same effect can be utilized in the water. There is also, I'll show you here as well, just on the full animation, I've got this rain effect as well. So After Effects does have built-in rain effects, does have, as you've seen there, like a lightning effect, which is a bit naff, to be honest with you. It could be better, just because it's not really interacting with anything, it's not lighting up the flag at all, but it does have built-in effects like this. The rain and the lightning are a bit harder to stylize through After Effects, just because it's a limited option. So I'm looking into different ways of doing that. There's ways to use turbulence and noise and all that sort of stuff to do it in After Effects, but I might just end up doing it using Photoshop assets and stuff like that. Obviously with the flag can have this waving effect on it no matter what the texture is, no matter what the 2D asset is. So I can develop the 2D asset to have all the nice sort of cell shading details and whatever color I want, and then this turbulent effect can be customized for every single flag, because it just adds movement and lighting. So that's perfect in that sense. And then that's the main idea for basically all the movement in those sorts of assets. So I'm happy enough with how that test went, and I'm happy enough to utilize that now going forward. But yeah, that's pretty much where the major project has shifted towards. I am much more happy with the direction it's going in, just because I am actually motivated to do it and it's exciting to work on. The next sort of steps are a lot of, I guess, asset development. There's always going to be asset development, but first in target is the two main characters. So I have started looking at the costume stylization for both of them, going for quite, not necessarily cliche, but the quintessential idea of a royal officer, a royal captain, versus the quintessential outfit on and styling of a pirate of the day. So I just want to make them my own, make them in my style, use that sort of cell shaded, rough, grungy look that I'm going for, because I think if I get those characters right, that will really set me in the right line for the rest of the styling, the rest of the animation in general. Yeah, just to sum up, much happier working in my main tools now, working in Photoshop, working in After Effects and Illustrator, because that's what I want to use going forward. And yeah, quite excited to see how it turns out.